Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Raphael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Raphael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. Allan, thank you so much for joining me on Coaching Call. How are you, buddy?
I'm really excited to be here, man. I always love having conversations with you. It's so much fun.
Likewise. So, thank you for being on my other show as well. The reason for this show and the reason I love this show is because we go deep, man. We go deep into who you are and why you even do what you do. So before we get into that aspect of the show, I'd love to know, and this is the most fascinating part for me, is I'd love to know where'd you grow up, and before the age of 10, who are your influencers? Who influenced you the most, would you say?
Well, I was a military brat. So I, over the course of my life, have lived in 13 different states and now 3 different countries. And so, from a young age, it was always move and meet new people, move and meet new people, move and meet new people. Oddly enough, that actually, I think, turned me into an introvert. I'm very happy with myself. I could spend hours, just in my own head. And if I spend a lot of time with people, I do actually need to decompress and spend time alone. So I think one of the biggest influences was that I got very good at talking to myself and hearing the voice in my head. Now, that voice was not always a nice person, but having the time to myself as much as I did, has really helped me understand a lot about the psychology of getting things done and how I do it and how other people do it. Because I sit down and actually just think about it. Too many times we get angry that we're not succeeding at something. And then here we are. As far as influences, most of them were teachers.
Really?
And they were teachers. Now, sadly, not always good influences, but influences nonetheless. And so for the good teachers that I had growing up, I really, really, really appreciate them and what they do. For the bad ones, you made me better too. So I guess I should be thankful for you.
I always say that some of the people that hurt me the most were the ones that helped me the most too.
Yeah. Well, I think you grow up and you're a kid and you think adults are like gods, they're not, they're not going to make mistakes. They're not going to, they're smart people and they're teaching this class. So they have to be smart people. And then, reality hits you. And so for me, it was a pretty early age that I was like, not everybody knows everything. Okay. And so that was kind of a wake up call that, okay, you're not going to suddenly become perfect when you become an adult. You still have to keep working on this stuff because you don't know everything. You may think you know everything and you may know practically everything, but there's always something to learn.
You just reminded me of, and I'm not trying to take away from what you said, but in a funny way, you reminded me of a teenager who knows everything.
Yeah.
That means nobody else knows anything, right?
Right. Anyone that disagrees with them, absolutely. And we have a lot of those folks walking around and they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s and beyond.
They never stop being a teenager then.
They don't. And that's okay. That's okay. You live your life, you do your thing. But, if you want to find real happiness, you're not going to find it thinking you know everything. You find it by going out and having conversations with people in an open way to say, hey, I can learn more. I can learn something from everybody. And that's when you're going to really start to see all the real beauty in the world, because it's more than just what you know today. And you have this huge opportunity to just keep growing and keep flourishing and have all of these experiences that you wouldn't otherwise have.
It's very interesting that you said that, because one of the sayings that I've been hearing a lot lately, and I think of it myself, is that the older you get, the less you know.
It's true on two fronts. One is they're adding stuff. So technology is changing the way things work. I mean, I use Zoom to record, and they just upgraded Zoom, and so instead of hitting preferences, you now have to hit settings. Okay, I'd learned that because I was like, I need to fix this, and then I'm looking for what I'm looking for. So yes, things are changing and new things are coming about, but absolutely, things you thought you knew, you didn't know as well as you thought you did.
When you consider the fact that you said you were an Army brat, what armed forces was it? Your mom, your dad? Was it both of them?
It was my stepfather's, and
Okay.
so the my stepfather that raised me until I was about 14, he was in the Army, but he was a helicopter mechanic. So we were typically living in Air Force bases. And then when they split, my mother got with a Marine, and so then I was kind of living the Marine child life experience, stepchild experience. So a little bit of all of it, a lot of traveling around, a lot of meeting a lot of different people, and a lot of different experiences.
Wow, you just told me something about your mom, which is pretty interesting, right? That she believed in the armed forces, that she understood that good people are in it, and that she liked to travel.
Well,
Right?
yeah. I don't know that I would go that far, but I would say that was her circle of influence after my father and they split up. Her circle of influence was the military, and she sort of stuck to that lifestyle and became that. And it worked for her. I mean, she was able to get jobs on bases because of civil service servants and stuff like that. So she was able to keep her career going. He was able, so it worked. And then, once you're kind of in the thing, the government thing, you're in the government thing.
Yeah. So, what was one of the experiences being an Army brat or Marine brat, if you will, that I'm sure there was other kids like in your situation. What were some of the things that you recall that really impacted you when you were there?
Well, you had this dichotomy because we at one time we were stationed in Presidio, which was just outside of San Francisco area, and there's the military aspect of all of it, and then there's the what's happening at home. We're all living in these apartments, and it's a lot of the military people are bringing that home, so you're seeing their kids being raised military. And then you're taking a walk on the beach and you see all these naked hippies smoking pot and looking at crystals. And so it was bizarre for, a 10-year-old kid to be saying, okay, well, you have these people who are sitting on the beach completely naked. And then you have this other dichotomy of people who are super strict, rigid, you walk in their house, it's like, people able to bounce a quarter off their bed or, dad's going to be mad at them. So it was just that I saw this just huge variety. And of course, being in the military, being the military brat and then being in the military, I did pick up more of the military-ish aspects of life, particularly early on, which I think that discipline and identity really did push me to do some exceptional things when I was younger. And so I do have that to thank, because if I'd gone more the hippie route, I don't know that I'd be where I am right now.
I got you. Not to say anything wrong with hippies, but it's
No.
lifestyle, right? It's a different lifestyle. So let me ask you, you were a military brat. You traveled to so many places. What was your favorite place when you were military? I'm going to say brat because I don't see you
Yeah.
as a, but that's just a saying.
I don't know. I could have been a brat at times. You're in there with them. You got to keep up with them, and yeah, there's a little bit of scrapping going on here and there. Yeah, I'm gonna say Presidio, and the core of it was that we were feral. We lived on a military base, but the way it was set up, because it was all a military base, there really were no limits on us. So we were latchkey kids. We'd get out of school, we'd come home, we'd have the key, we can get in, we can do whatever we want. So I'm climbing a 70-foot tree just so I can see the water from near our house. If I climb these real big high trees, I could walk down to that beach. It was like a half a mile away from where we lived. And I would do that. Like I was 8, 9, 10 years old, and I'm deciding I want to go to the beach. And I walk down the beach, and I'm sitting on the beach or collecting seashells by myself. I don't know that you'd have a 10-year-old doing that this day and age. And so, yes, we were feral. We were digging caves. We were starting fires. We were building ramps. All the things that should have killed us didn't. And it was just a wonderful, exciting thing when I wasn't in school or anything. When I was feral, when I was free, I was out doing a lot of fun, interesting things.
Very cool. Very cool. So you also mentioned that you went into the military. At what age, and then what military service did you go into?
Okay, I went in at age 20. I'd gotten my associate's degree in physics. I actually wanted to be an astronaut. And so I was the kid that wanted to be an astronaut, that was still wanted to be an astronaut when I got out of high school. And so I went into junior college majoring in physics with the intention that I would fly the shuttle. My sophomore year, Columbia blew up. And everybody else is looking at the spirals of smoke, thinking, ooh, ah, and I'm thinking they just killed a civilian. And they're not going to fly another mission until they find every single piece of that thing and decide how it happened and how it can never happen again. And so I felt like that probably killed my window, because, if that hadn't happened, they probably would have been flying a lot more missions. They would have built a lot more shuttles, and it would have been almost like an airline. So that's the way I kind of looked at it. Space travel by this time was supposed to be like an airline, and you'd be going up all the time, and you have all these astronauts. Now, Elon's catching up, so he's going to get us there, but this is 2 decades behind probably where it would have been if the shuttles had not blown up. And so I realized my window was done. I also knew that if I just wanted to continue at senior college or regular university, I was in no financial shape to make that happen. So I felt like, okay, I'm going to take 2 years, regroup, figure my life out, and then I can come back. Plus, they had this they had the GI Bill, so there'd be more money for school. I could save money in the Army anyway, because if I'm living with them, I'm living on their base, all this would be fairly easy. So I joined, and I took the ASVAB, and as you might imagine, majoring in physics and going in and taking the Army test, they came out with thousands and thousands of opportunity jobs. And I said, okay, I want you to delete every one of them that says mechanic and every one of them that says engineer. And I was left with like 4. Now, one of them was field artillery surveyor, and I'm like, I saw they had a calculator sitting right there. I'm like, no, no, I do not. No, I just did 2 years of physics. I do not want to spend 2 more years doing stuff. And so I got rid of that. So there was I forget what so maybe there were only 3, but the other one was medic. And I was thinking about the E2 that was sitting downstairs taking blood out of hundreds of arms every day. And I'm like, I don't know that I want to be a field medic in peacetime. because I could very well be that E2 sitting down there on taking blood out of people's arms every day. And then they showed the video for infantry. And these guys were running around. They were playing football. They were roughhousing. You know, it just, I was like, okay, that's what I need to do. I need to go in and do that. I can turn off my brain for 2 years, and I can just regroup and figure out what I really want to do with my life.
Mm.
So I was in the infantry.
Very cool. Very cool. How long did you serve? And thank you for your service, by the way.
Thank you. It was just a 2-year term. That was the requirement, you know, and that's the other thing. The other ones had a longer term. And so I was thinking, okay, here I can do the 2 years, and then it was 8-year sign up, but you know, they're all 8-year sign ups, but it was 2 active and then 6 inactive. And so that would just seem to suit me the best. I said, okay, I'll do that 2 years, and then I'll come out and go back to school.
Very cool. What was your biggest takeaway from serving?
One, that I didn't want to be in the Army.
You realize wait, hang on. How soon did you realize that?
Well, it really was when I got to my unit, because before my unit, when I was in training, and then I spent some time on the side waiting for some paperwork. And then, so when they sent me to my unit, I quickly realized that, okay, you're going to get orders, and mentally, you know, they're stupid. you know, this is not what you're supposed to do. I did so much reading on military tactics, and everything else. I knew what we were supposed to be doing. It was similar like when I played football. I knew every position on the football field. I knew where everybody was supposed to be for every single play we called. And so, you know, if the coach needed me anywhere, I was there. And this is kind of the same thing with the way our military works, like, and it was very different than some other militaries. If the sergeant goes down, the corporal moves up. You know, if the first sergeant goes down, the staff sergeant goes up. And so everybody kind of needs to know what's going on to a point that you're ready to step in. I mean, okay, that's the way I took it. And so we'd be going through exercises, and that very thing would happen. The sergeant would get killed, and it's like, step up, you're the leader. What do you want us to do? And so that would happen. Now, this was all in training. It was not live, but that's exactly how it's probably going to happen in actual wartime, and does happen. So I was seeing a lot of decisions being made or pushed down, orders that just didn't make any sense. And I was seeing a lot of people that were not invested in the unit, and they were okay with that. They were just biding their time. And I'm thinking, okay, the guy who won't do the work is going to let us down, and he's going to get us killed. The orders that don't make any sense just make me feel foolish. I'm like, okay, I should not be digging in right here. This is not this is not a good position. And then later on, I realized what's happened. It was a political move to make the other side look good. They wanted us to get beat. We had to get beat. That was the point of us digging in there. And so there was these kind of things going on, the politics of it, and then the people who were just sort of drifting and still being rewarded for it. Things have probably changed. This was back in the 80s, the mid 80s. So a lot's probably changed since then. But for me, I was like, no, if I come in to do something, I want to be around people that are as hard charging as I am. Because I want us all to go home alive. You know, if we go into a combat situation, I would want every single one of us to come out alive. And if people are not doing the right things, or we're getting really crappy orders, that's not going to happen. So that was part of it, plus just being told what to do. So, you know, I was a feral child for most of my childhood because both my parents worked, and I could run and do what I wanted to do. So when we would come back in, we would road march 20, 25 miles to come in the last day. We've been out for 2 weeks. We got a 20, 25-mile hike back in with our gear. And we get back in, and it's 8 o'clock at night, and they're like, okay, start breaking down your weapons and cleaning them. And I know we're not going to have enough time. They're going to turn us loose before we get them clean, and we're going to come back tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock anyway. I'm like, why not just turn us over and let us go home and come back tomorrow and clean the weapons, because we're going to have to come back anyway. So there were those kind of little things that I'm just like, I'm sitting on the concrete, breaking down my weapon to clean it. And then, 15 minutes later, like, okay, put it back together and head on out. What was the point of that? Again, I'm not someone who takes stupid orders. I don't like that. I'll do them because, again, I was in the military service. That was what they said to do. I did it, but I was not happy about it. So yes, the lesson I had learned was that I could not have been a lifer in the military. So I have utmost respect for people who can grit their teeth and keep doing that, because I just wasn't wired that way.
It's very interesting that you bring that up, because recently, it was probably this week sometime, I was talking to a guy who was in the military for a long time, and I said, why is it that they do things just like what you talked about? I said, I understand that they have to break them down to build them back up, and they want to build them back up a certain way. I get that part. But there's so many things that could be avoided. And he agreed, but then he also said, it's a systematic way that's been done forever, and the change does not come easy.
Yeah.
And if they do,
well, I can definitely understand the breakdown when you're in basic training, when you're in training, because that's a necessary part of opening up to learn. If you think you know it all, if you think you're perfect, you won't learn anything. We talked about that earlier. But the breakdown that happens is you are not as strong as you think you are. You are not as smart as you think you are. And then they break you down, and then they build you back up. So you get there and it's like, you're doing push-ups for forever, and it hurts. You're in the front leaning rest, which is the top of the push-up position. Okay. The captain's yelling, push Fort Benning, and you're doing push-ups. And then you realize, okay, yeah, I could do 20, 30 push-ups, but when I'm going, I'm going to break down at some point. And we do that, and they make you feel bad about it. And then later you find, okay, I'm doing 50 or 60 push-ups before I break down. And then I'm doing 100 push-ups before I break down. And that's the buildup. So when you come out of that, it's like, you know that you've accomplished these different things. And the intent is to open you up for a military career where you're breaking a lot of boundaries. You're breaking a lot of limits as you go through your career. That's the intent. But if they don't do that breaking at the front end, people come in thinking they know everything, and they won't learn anything.
So you realized, this is not for me.
Yeah, well, I could do it. But I just realized for the long term, a military career was not the life I wanted to have.
Right. When you actually were able to get out, or did you already start planning your exit strategies, start planning what you were going to do once you were out?
Yeah. I had enrolled at Southern Mississippi to major in accounting. So, not a straight line path at all. But I had registered to get out. They were offering an early out. So I thought, okay, I've already got the college money locked up. I'm making some money here, but if I went back and went offshore, I could make a lot more over the summer. So I left the Army in May, and I went offshore, basically working as a roustabout, somewhere around anywhere from 78 to 116 hours a week, 2 weeks on, 1 week off throughout the summer in South Louisiana.
Wow, that's interesting. So that was probably a great schedule, because you were on, and then you had time off, right?
Yeah.
So we get that you were working. What'd you do in your time off?
Well, I had Mickey Mouse hands. My my wife at the time, she didn't want to be seen with me because I was outside in the sun all day, every day. Okay, we worked 12 to 16-hour days for 14 straight days, but I had to wear gloves, so I wore gloves all the time, and shorts and shoes. So when I was home, I was dark, dark brown, except for my hands that were just ghostly white. And so we didn't do a whole lot. Plus, again, the core premise was to save as much money as I could over the summer, so I would have the cash to get a place to stay and get started in school. So I was ready to pay my tuition. I was ready to pay my rent. I had all that money set up so that when I went into college, I would have a way to I would transition in. It wouldn't be a panic in and trying to find something. And initially I wasn't even going to work while I was in school. But then I realized, okay, the computer lab's only open these hours, and I kind of need a computer, and I kind of want this thing, and I kind of want that thing. And so I decided to get a job just so I could have a better lifestyle, an easier lifestyle. And so yeah, that was the only reason I got a job. And within 6 weeks of getting a job as a cook in a restaurant, I was the assistant manager. So, I worked my way up like, boom, no, you're the next assistant manager. That happened almost immediately. And so I was in management of, at that time, it was a restaurant for the 3.5 years I was in college. After that, I was in that restaurant for about, let's say, 2 of them. And then I went over to retail management, and I was an assistant manager at a pharmacy.
So you've had a lot of experience with being told what to do.
Yes.
And then now you're at the place where you're managing other people. Now, what happens with some people when they're being told what to do for so long is that, especially in the military, they're being yelled at. You better do this like this, da, da, da. So there's no EQ, if you right, no emotional intelligence. How did you, as a manager, manage? Did you have emotional intelligence, or did you manage the way that you were managed?
I managed the way I wanted to be managed. So for me, it was, if I'm going to tell you to do something, I'm going to tell you why you're going to do it. Now, I'm also going to do some other things that will let you know that I'm not just this hard ass. So here's an example. New kid comes in, he's a dishwasher. He's back there washing dishes for, 5 hours or so. His hands are kind of mushy because his hands been in water for 5 hours. And then you go tell him that because we're so close to the highway, all the light bulbs in the ceiling, they get loose and we can't have them falling. So you tell him to go get a ladder and go screw the light bulbs in. Well, they've been on all day, so they're hot and his hands are sensitive. And so you see this kid on a ladder trying to screw in these light bulbs until he realizes everybody's watching him and giggling. And then he realizes he just had a gag put on him. And so, you throw a little gag at him. You let him know, okay, it's lighthearted. We're going to have fun. If I ask you to do something, I'll tell you why you're doing it. But I expect you to do it. And, it was that kind of thing. So I went at it very differently because, again, I think being a feral kid and then being put into a strict environment for a while, I was able to do both, and I can do both. And so later on, when I became an internal auditor, it was very easy for me to turn on the drill sergeant when I needed to, as a part of interrogations when someone had committed fraud, for example. So I think my upbringing gave me kind of a diverse way to look at things and realize if someone asks me to do something, I just want to know why. I'll feel better about it if I know why I'm doing it.
It's much better than hearing because I told you so.
It works when you're a kid, but you don't want to hear that as an adult. You're like, this doesn't make sense to me. Why do you want me to do it this way? Or why do you want me to do this? And so that's why with my coaching, I tell my clients, before I bring them on as a client, I tell them, I said, okay, I can only bring you on if you're coachable. And I say, coachable means that you're going to do what I ask you to do. And if you have a question, I want you asking. I want you to know why. If you don't know why you're doing it, I don't want you to do it. So the coachable person comes in, they're open-minded to what they can do or will do. And then I ask them if they're going to try something, and I want you to ask me why. And in the end, when you realize why we're doing it, you're going to do it well because you know the outcome we're going for. You know the why.
That's important as a coach because a lot of people, they take anybody on because they want the money, right? Somebody goes, hey, I got 10 grand, here you go. and then all of a sudden they're the biggest headache you've ever had, right? So it's not
Exactly.
worth money. Not
Right.
worth
So I have some qualifying questions, and that's one of them. You need to be coachable. You need to be committed to the task, meaning you're going to do the work, because I can't tell you how many times I've had someone come on and yeah, I'm going to do it. Yeah, I'm going to do it. And then you're like, okay, so here's what I need you to do. And it's pretty simple. And then I say, okay, on a confidence check, 1 to 7, how confident are you can do this? No, it's a 7. It's a 7. I can do this. Okay, cool. Let's go do it. And let's talk about it next week. And then you get back next week and it's like, well, no, the car broke down and the kid got sick, and this spur of the moment vacation we went on. So I didn't do any of it. Like, oh, come on, so yeah, I ask them if they're committed. And then a lot of times my third question is going to really just be about their lifestyle. So if someone's in a relationship or has, partner, and I'm like, okay, are they going to support you in doing this? Because if they're going to be bringing cookies home just to mess with you, you're going to really, really struggle through this. If your kids are not going to understand why you need to take 45 minutes to go down in the basement and do your workout, you're going to struggle at this. So that's a fairly common question I'll ask them. And then the other question sometimes I'll ask is just, are you willing to dream big? I mean, because right now you believe small, and I'm going to prove you wrong. And after I prove you wrong, are you willing to dream big? Because I think you can do so much more. And the dream big one, I like those kind of clients when I can say that, are you willing to, because they're like, I had a 50-year-old woman come in and she said, I don't believe a woman in menopause can lose weight. And I said, okay, my guarantee, let me prove you wrong. If I'm wrong, I'll give you your money back. If I'm right, then hey, and so she did. She did. She was signed on for, I think, about 8 weeks, and she did lose about 8 pounds during that 8 weeks, which she didn't believe she could do. And so I said, okay, now I want you to dream big. You told me initially you needed to lose 41 pounds. And she said, yes. I said, okay, let's go do that, right? And she's like, well, I don't think. And I said, dream big. You lost 8 pounds when you told me you couldn't lose any weight. Dream big. Let's go dream big. And she's like, okay, let's do it. She signed up for 6 months, cut all 41 pounds off.
Nice.
So that's what I enjoy.
Into how we even got here, talking about you having people losing weight. So we were in the military. You went into, and you said something that I was like, ooh, very interesting. When you were interrogating somebody in a way, right, because they committed fraud. Let's get into that for a minute, right? Because that's really interesting. I am listening, by the way.
Yeah, you are. So what happened was I went to school. Go ahead.
How did you get to that position?
Okay. So I went into school majoring in accounting. And when you major in accounting, you're going to go one of 3 ways. Well, 4 ways. There's 4. The fourth way is you can't do accounting. So you change your major to marketing. Nothing against marketing. It's a very important aspect of business, but most marketers I knew in college were failed accounting majors. Okay. So there's that path. Then there's just the accounting path where you go for the 4 years and you're going to be a bookkeeper or an H&R Block tax accountant kind of person. Then there's the people that go on further, used typically for their masters. They're going to get their CPA exam. They're going to take that. Those folks split. Some of them go into the tax and many of them go into audit. So I was in audit. So when I went through, I knew I was going to be an auditor. I passed the CPA exam. I went on with the firm and I was an auditor. Cool thing about audit, if you're good at it and you enjoy it, is you get to see businesses all the way through. The records, financial records and aspects of the business are all there in front of you. So I got to see dozens and dozens and dozens of different businesses, different structures, and through their accounting was able to kind of lay out how they were making money and what they were doing. So I got really good at seeing the systems of what it should look like, which meant I was very good at seeing what was missing. And so when something's missing, I could see it, and I could reverse engineer what actually happened. So one of my first fraud cases was a bookkeeper who was doing a thing called kiting. Now, the way kiting works is this. So they've got all these customers, and all the customers have all these invoices. And then as the money comes in, the accountant begins taking some of the money and applying part of the money to different accounts. And so they end up they're able to draw out a bit of money and a little bit more money and a little bit more money. And then they just now have to sit there and play the magical, don't let any of these go delinquent games. Okay. It's a very silly scam to try to pull, because it's impossible to pull off forever. It's like almost like it's a reverse Ponzi scheme. If you're pulling money out, you're creating opportunities to get caught. And so this was someone that was doing that. So I went back and reverse engineered to prove exactly how much she had taken from the company. And the owner, he was a successful businessman, but he was just so busy running the business and living his life that he wasn't really paying attention to that side of the house. He thought he was covered, and she wasn't covering him all that well. So basically, yeah, that was my first fraud case while I was still in the firm. And then when I went out, I wanted to get into internal audit, because I felt like that's an opportunity for me to really dive in at one company and learn really deep all the different aspects of how that business runs. So my first internal audit job was with EDS, which was the Ross Perot company. If you remember Ross Perot, that was the company that made him a billionaire. So it's his company, but he was no longer there. We were a public company. I was with them for a number of years. And then the next company I went to was an electronics manufacturing company called 3Com, which was the first company. This was the company that invented Ethernet, which is now what runs our internet. And then I went from there to a timeshare company. So I was learning hospitality and sales. And then I moved from there to an oil and gas company. And so over the course of my career, I was just plugging in different industries to make my resume or CV very strong. But there was a lot of fraud, a lot of fraud investigations along the way.
It's incredible, right? When people don't realize that money is being taken out. I had a partner who didn't pay the bills, but was pocketing the money. Yeah. And the only reason I knew is because there was a notice on my door that my lights were being shut off that night. I was like, why? And they were in charge of paying the bills. I'm like, where's the money? Oh, and so I was like, okay, time to get rid of this partner.
Yeah, I had an ex-wife. I had an ex-wife that did that to me.
32 grand was taken.
I hate that.
And
I do.
When you consider that, do you press charges? Do you go? So that was a route that I could have gone, but then I said, it's just better to move on. And,
yeah, most companies do that, which is somewhat unfortunate. I know it's hard, but what that person ends up somewhere else, and they end up doing it to someone else. And so I was always happier with companies that were willing to do the right thing and push that through. Not that what you did was the wrong thing. I'm just saying I liked when we prosecuted. So when we prosecuted, I knew, okay, this guy's going to have fraud charges against him. Anyone who does a background check on him is not going to hire this guy and is not going to get duped by him. So that was my job. That's what I would do. I'd build those cases. So when we went in for fraud, we had them.
So I'm wondering, you went from all this corporate stuff to what you're doing now. And I kind of know your story, a little bit of how you got into it. But if you can give us a quick analysis, even if in your head, why that shift had to happen, because you're not doing that anymore. You're a coach. You help people. And I'm about to throw your website up here because you have 40plusfitness.com, And that is, unless that's a financial fitness, I think that we're talking an actual physical fitness, right?
Yes. So what basically happened was I had worked my way up. I was like I said, I was really good at my job. I'm not bragging here to say at 39 years old I was in the C-suite, vice president of a Fortune 500 company, and that's exactly when you go into business working for a corporation. That's exactly where you peg yourself. I want to be a vice president of a Fortune 500 company before I'm 40 years old, which I did, and I was miserable. My health was failing. My fitness was terrible. And I just didn't even like myself. I was in a toxic relationship. There's just all this other stuff. And the relationships with the people I should have been really close to, my family, those were all dissolving right before me. And so I knew I had to make some changes. And I did a lot over 8 years that really got me nowhere. Other than leaving a really toxic job, I was pretty much, I felt like I was right back where I was. I did end the toxic relationship. And so now I was cleaning that up. And then my daughter said something to me that really kind of kicked me in the gut when she asked me to go watch her do a CrossFit competition. And I'm thinking to myself, whoa, dude, you're not supposed to watch or be a spectator in your daughter's life. You're supposed to be a participant. So this was like a wake-up call, like, okay, you've got to do something to build a better relationship with your daughter. I mean, it's good she's invited me to come watch, but that's not what I wanted her to do. I would want her to invite me to come participate in the event with her. So I set some pretty heady goals on myself, and I pushed myself really, really hard. I managed to lose 66 pounds of fat, gain 11 pounds of muscle in about 11 months. I did that. I couldn't hire a coach. I was traveling about 90%. And when, people that have traveled, you'll know the numbers. 90% means I'm home one weekend a month. No one can hire a personal trainer that's going to get them results in one weekend a month. So I knew I needed to do something. There were no online trainers. There's no resources. So I'm like, okay, I have to figure out how to train myself. So I got certified with the National Academy of Sports Medicine. And then I went on and got their corrective exercise. I got their fitness nutrition. Then I got certified by the Functional Aging Institute with their functional aging, certified functional aging specialist cert. And then I kind of had the tools. I'm like, okay, this is what a trainer would tell me to do. So Allan, just go do it. So I was my own trainer. I wouldn't recommend that as the path to go. Hire a trainer is a lot faster and a lot cheaper. But I did. That's what I did. And so wherever I went, I would do the research. Here's the best gym. Here's the best food. Here's the thing. And I just was on 100% all the way through. And then I was there with my daughter doing a Tough Mudder about 11 months after she said, come watch me at a CrossFit competition. And of course, when friends see pictures of you on Facebook and they're like, dude, I just saw you not 8 months ago. What did you do? What happened? And so I'm like, well, it's not hard, but it can be if you don't do it right from a perspective of knowing what your limits are and knowing what works and what doesn't. And so I agreed to coach my friend. And I decided, okay, there's still no resources. There were no podcasts. There were no books. The only books you had for people over 40 was chair yoga and stretching. And I'm like, that's not what I'm after. So I decided I would go ahead and do a podcast, and I would coach people online, kind of as a hobby, if you will, because I had no intention at that point of leaving my corporate job. It paid me very, very well. And so I was like, well, I'll just do this on the side, and then I'll retire at 55, and then I'll have this as a kind of a sideline to keep me busy in retirement. Well, the company I was with was going through rounds of layoff after layoff after layoff. If you've ever been in a boardroom when they start talking about these layoffs, they use really cool terms like headcount, span of control, and they do that so they don't have to say Julie and Tracy and Aiden and Mike. But that's what headcount is. Okay. And so to me, it's like, okay, you want me to cut 25%, and I cut 67% last year, and I cut more the year before. I mean, so I'm like, at some point, it's like, this is just ridiculous. And so it got to, I was like in year 2 of my 5-year plan, and they finally put me on the list. And I went home and I told my wife, I said, yeah, I could go ahead and put my resume out there. I've built a very solid resume. I can get a job. It won't pay as much as what I was making. And then I won't be vested in the stocks and things like that for a few years. So the money won't come for, 4 or 5 years down the line. So do I want to re-up for a 5-year term at least, or just make this online coaching and podcast thing work? And I told her, I really don't want to go back. And so that was the decision, was I'm going to be an online coach. So I sat down and wrote a book that year, 2018. It's called The Wellness Roadmap. It won awards. It got nominated for others. So I'm really excited about that book. It's worked out very well for me. It was a huge investment in time, a huge investment in money, but I was really glad I did it. And then we were looking at our living expenses and saying it's a little too expensive where we are right now. Can we do better? And so that's why we actually moved down to Panama. So our
both got lost for a second there, Allan.
Okay. Well, we moved down to Panama, and there were 2 reasons for that. One was it was less expensive to live. It is less expensive to buy and live here. But the other side of it was just the kind of decisions that I'm like, okay, I left corporate because I wanted to reduce my stress and not have to deal with that. And that's one of the reasons I went into just doing the training. And then here I was like, okay, I have a lot less stress living in Panama than where we were living. And so I was like, okay, this is perfect. So when I make decisions now, it's very different than the decisions I made before. The decisions before were always up the hill financially. Okay, I joined the Army to get the money to go to college. After college, I got a career that I knew would push me up through the business ranks relatively quickly. Every job I chose, every place I went, was for the money, the bigger opportunity as we go, and to grow my career. And then after I kind of had that wake-up call, I started making my decisions on what's going to actually serve me the best, not just provide the most financial, but all across holistically, my health, all of it. And so I've been making decisions since that are about serving me and not necessarily serving my wallet.
When you consider your move to Panama, you're probably in a better state of mind as well, not just because you're living in a beautiful paradise, right? But you just talked about it's not chasing the money anymore. It's chasing health, chasing waking up in the morning, right? Going to the beach,
joy,
whatever.
Yeah, all of it.
So, Alchan says, great point, pivoting in life career change, Allan, kudos. When you consider some people don't realize how their life can be if they just step back a little bit. And I think your daughter, she didn't have you step back. She pushed you back.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, wait a minute. But for you to lose 66 pounds in 11 months, that was commitment. And a lot of people, and you said people saw you on Facebook and they're like, dude, what have you been doing? When they always envisioned you that way, right? But we can't live through the eyes of someone else. We have to look in the mirror for ourselves. And I think that your daughter said, hey, Dad, not only what are you doing? You're not with me is enough, but did you look at yourself lately? Right?
Yes. I don't think that was her intent, but,
but I'm saying without knowing it, that's what she did.
Yeah. And to take you forward. So when we were going to do the Tough Mudder, I signed us up. I had no business signing us up. It was like 8 months out. And I'm like, I can't do this right now. No way. But it really lit a fire under me. And 2 things, one was, okay, when she got off the plane and I was waiting outside, she walked out and said, Daddy, you got skinny. Okay. That was the first one. And then finishing up the Tough Mudder with her, holding her hand.
That's awesome.
And so what I took from that, what I got from that was, okay, most people that will go after something really haven't fleshed out why they're doing it. Okay, why? Really, why? Okay, did I want to lose 66 pounds? Sure, I did. But it wasn't my why. That wasn't emotional and deep enough. Losing weight is not ever going to be deep enough. So what was my real why? My real why was my relationship with my daughter. But even more so, the deeper why, if I ask why again, it was two things. It was her respect for me and my self-respect. And so if you're looking to change anything, start with why and really get deep, really get into the emotion of it, because you're not going to change if it's just external. It's like, yeah, I know I would look better if I lost, weight. I lost weight all the time. That was not the problem. I mean, I had suits from a 34 waist all the way up to a 44 waist. And over the course of my career, I mean, up and down through that range all the time. But there was nothing strong enough to stick me down until it came down to where I got to that why. It's self-respect and the respect of my daughter.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I've had a lot of clients who lose weight. And obviously I'm in the fitness industry as well. And one of the things I say to them is donate your clothes. Donate your clothes.
Burn your boats.
Never go back to that.
Yeah.
And the thing is, one of the other things is I see people, they buy clothes bigger than they are. And I'm like, why? I mean, don't look like a sausage, because some people do.
Yeah.
That's there for them, right? But don't look like a sausage, but don't go buy clothes bigger than you, because you're going to do one thing. You're going to fill them. One day I was, my sister and brother-in-law, my brother-in-law is a deacon, and I used to eat with the priests all the time, almost every night. And as a young man, I used to go and get 3 different servings. And I used to pile food on my thing, because I didn't have a tapeworm, but it seemed like I did. And I would go get food and come back and go back. And one of the priests one day said to me, I have a gift for you. I'm like, what is it? He pulls out a 3X shirt. He goes, you're going to fit in this one day. I said, oh, I'm not. And I've been very lucky that I have a fast metabolism. And the reason for my fast metabolism, I don't think it's from my genetics. It's because I move a lot. So for me, movement has been the key to my being in shape. So I work out every single day. I have for my whole life. So somebody even says to me, how do you stay in shape?
Well, you never get out of shape.
I said, well, one of the things the most important thing, somebody said, well, I don't do what you do. I do this. I'm like, congratulations, you're moving. And you don't have to do what I do, but you have to do something, right? So that's the whole, I believe that's the whole category that we have to go into. And it's not what you do, but the fact that you do something, right? The movement is the biggest aspect. Whether you go dancing, swimming, running, jogging, weightlifting, anything, roller skating, anything, as long as you're moving. Watching television and moving your thumb to change the remote, that's not moving. Right?
Yeah. So I remember talking to someone one time and they said, all you have to do to lose weight is get your heart rate up. I'm like, well, then sit on the couch and watch horror flicks. Get your heart rate up. But no, I actually think it is movement. That's absolutely essential. What you eat and how you eat is essential. How you the stress levels that you're under and how you manage it, how you sleep, and then how you talk to yourself. That voice inside you. Okay, because inside of you, if you can imagine that you have this being inside of you, and this little being inside of you has no outside stimulus. They only have what you put inside. So if you're putting crappy food in there, you're telling this being, we've got a nutritional problem. We don't have adequate nutrition here. This is what we're having to eat. Even though the brain chose to eat those, the body's like, well, I want, I'm not getting what I need. And sometimes we'll ask you for more. That's not asking for more Oreos. It's asking for actual real nutrition. Okay. That's
Oreos are filling.
they can be for a minute, but the whole that voice inside, that thing inside is asking for more because it needs more nutrition. So if we're giving it adequate nutrition, it'll feel safe. Our body wonders why we're not moving. Why are we? Why is sitting in the cat cave all day long and not out hunting and foraging and doing stuff? Is it dangerous? What's going on? Okay, let's kick up the cortisol. Let's hold on to body fat. Let's cut some muscle because, well, he's not moving, so we don't need that. And there goes your problem. So we need adequate movement. We need good, solid, adequate nutrition. If we're stressed, the body's like, okay, we're not safe. And it doesn't know it's just because your boss yelled at you today and yelled at you yesterday and will probably yell at you tomorrow. And so you're stressed about that, but you're not letting it go. You're not managing it. So inside, it feels scared and threatened. If you're not sleeping well, your body's not recovering. It's like, okay, we're not recovering. There's something wrong. I don't feel safe. Or if the voice in you is like calling yourself out all the time and using words like never and always and can't and idiot and all the other names that it might throw out there, your body does not feel safe. When your body does not feel safe, it's not going to operate metabolically well. You're going to gain weight. You're not going to be able to lose it. You're going to lose muscle. You're not going to be able to gain it. And it's all based on that information. And this all tracks through to the endocrine system. That's the communication network. So when you are lifting heavy and you're doing things, you've got your sex hormones are working well, your cortisol's low, the dopamine and all the things, you're feeling good, your serotonin rises when it's supposed to, you sleep well, you're getting all your hormones cycled right. All of that stuff works together. That's that internal body that gets no outside stimulus. It only gets what you give it.
Right.
So food, movement, stress management, sleep, and what you say are all information. They're feeding your body. And if you do that feeding right, your body will heal and it will treat you right.
Oh, without a doubt. Thank you for sharing all that. That's such important information that a lot of people don't see it that way. And I think one of the other things that a lot of people neglect is drinking enough. And I'm not talking liquor, right? I'm talking water. A lot of people think that they're hungry. They're actually starving for water, right? They're dehydrated. And a lot of people, so a lot of times I'll tell clients, I said, hey, how much did you drink? Oh, well, so the other thing is, are you able to work out after you eat? Well, the old story is that, I can't go swimming after I eat. I shouldn't work out. I should probably just sit after I eat. I'm like, no, you should move after you eat. That's what you should be doing. So when you think about, so Jackie Chan at 70 years old is constantly moving in the mind. Yes, of course he is, because he's Jackie Chan. Come on. Think about just the fact that the foods we choose, right? If there was a study done many, many years ago in China, actually, and thanks for bringing up Jackie Chan, because he is an incredible human being. The guy's just a machine, right? No matter, I think, he'll be 90, he'll still be doing the things he does. But there was a study done in China where they found out that there was all of a sudden, more disease in the cities, but not in the countryside. And they did a study. And it's because all the kids started eating what happened, what came to the cities? Fast food. Processed foods. Meanwhile, in the villages, they were still eating from the land. And in the villages, none of those illnesses were happening. It was only in the inner city communities, because they were working hard, they were stressed, they were eating fast and hard, they didn't take the time, and they didn't eat from the from the ground, they ate only what was processed, fast foods. So
Yeah.
therefore, they had high diabetes, all these different terrible things were happening to the body because they were not eating properly. And it's still happening today because a lot of us live, hey, I gotta, what's the number one thing that most fast food companies advertise? One hand food, one hand food.
Yeah.
It's wrapped up. It's a taco. It's a this. It's a, you can hold it with one hand while you're driving with the other one, right? It's supersized. It's all these different things that are not healthy for you. So when you eat that way, you get what you eat, I think.
Yeah. And your body's saying, I'm not getting the nutrition I need. Give
Therefore, I
me
want
more. Give me more.
more Oreos, please.
Yeah. Well, and up to your point, there's one of the main reasons that the body looks to food for liquid, because again, if you're really thirsty, your body's dehydrated, is if you look at fruits, vegetables, and even meats, they carry a good bit of water in them, whereas the Oreo cookies or the taco, not as much. So we can get hydration from food if we're eating whole food.
Yeah. Water-based foods.
Yes.
Watermelon, lettuce, tomatoes, all the stuff that's delicious. So yesterday I made a salad with lettuce, tomatoes, cucumbers, and a peach. It was so delicious.
Yeah.
And so while I'm eating, I'm like, wow, people think I'm eating like a rabbit. I'm like, man, I am the happiest rabbit right now.
Yeah. I love my big ass salads.
Yeah. Sometimes they're very filling.
They are.
I get a salad. Sometimes when I am, because I don't have time, I pick up a salad at a place and they call it arugula salad. It comes with chicken, and then everything. It's got arugula, it's got a pear, it's got all this, and but it's so filling. And yet, I never thought, oh, that's just a boring salad. No, it's delicious. So, Allan, I gotta tell you, my friend, it's amazing when you speak and the passion that you bring when you talk about nutrition, when you talk about health. I know we're wrapping it up, so tell me, and I've put your website here. You're helping people who are in their midlife, right? I'm not going to say 30 is not midlife because you should not live just to 60.
Shouldn't be. Yeah, shouldn't be.
Even nowadays, if you eat right and you do everything, 40 should not even be your midlife. It should be the beginning of your midlife, right? It should be another 40 years to your midlife and then another 40 after.
If technology takes us there, please.
Please. So what's one piece of advice that you would give someone who needs to, I'm going to tell them the advice that they should go to your website, right? 40plusfitness.com, so you can guide them. But what's one piece of advice that somebody who maybe they're working so hard on their career, sometimes they're avoiding their family because they got to put food on the table. Obviously, take time for your family, but what's one piece of advice that you can give them that can maybe they can reclaim their health?
Well, like anything else in life, nothing beautiful happens in your comfort zone. So if you want to change, you're going to have to get uncomfortable. And you're going to have to deprioritize things that have been top of your life and reprioritize things that you've been pushing away. Most people know what they're supposed to do. They know how to eat. They know how to move. We inherently know most of this stuff. They're just not doing it. And don't lie to yourself. You're just not doing it. So sit down, get your priorities in order, and get uncomfortable. And then change will happen.
Love it. Beautiful. Thank you, my friend. Great
Thank you.
Today. Everybody else?
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Sir. Everybody have an exceptional rest of your day, and we will see you soon. Take care.
Okay. Ciao, guys. you.